all these things, the United States has in some ways marginal influence because these are very deep internal dimensions. The one thing where we have, the train has left the station. We have said we will not allow for containment, and we are going to do something odd. I was at an event recently with a former senior official, and I said, do you think that the United States should have said, ruled out containment? And this guy said, well, I worked for many, many presidents, and they all said things that then they later had to live with. And he said, we said that about North Korea. What do you think is going to happen with Iran?
I think the first thing that'll happen, there'll be a big push for diplomacy, and we'll see whether, against this backdrop of sanctions that are having some effect, whether you can come up with a deal that's essentially enough for the Iranians and not too much for the United States and the Israelis. I think you'd have to be a little bit skeptical about that happening. And then the real question is then what the Iranians actually do. And I think the more probable trajectory is they stop, at least for the time being, just short of a nuclear weapon. So that wouldn't trigger Mr. Obama's comment. And then the question...
So short of Netanyahu's red line?
Well, that's the bigger question, because the Israeli tolerance is clearly less than the American tolerance. And then, so if the Iranians, say, go 90% of the way or 80% of the way towards a nuclear weapon, can we live with that, the United States? Can the Israelis live with that? Now, that might in part depend upon exactly what the details are, what degree of inspections or transparency we have. What's the timeline between where they arrive at before they could actually have a nuclear weapon? Do we feel we would have other opportunities to interrupt it? My hunch is that's going to be the big debate of 2013. And what's so interesting about this, more than any other issue, this could be the one that affects not just the entire region, because it's already on edge for all the reasons that Ian and Anne-Marie mentioned, but the global economy.
Iran.
So I think this president will be different than other presidents in terms of actually being willing to strike Iran, because this president came into office determined to move the world away from nuclear weapons. He came in with the idea that if we have 30 countries in the world with nuclear weapons, we're going to blow ourselves up. Part of his legacy is to actually move away to a world that could imagine not having nuclear weapons. So Iran for him is not just about Israel's security, it's not just about the Middle East, it is about if another nation gets nuclear weapons, we are never going to be able to stop this. So I actually think if they go toward deciding to get a nuclear weapon, he will strike. He will not live with containment, but for broader reasons than other presidents have had.
So the exit question, I'll start with you, Ian, is simple. Will there be an Israeli or American strike in 2013?
No, absolutely not. But I also am very skeptical that we're going to see a deal. I think there'll be a lot of headlines about diplomacy, but the timing is very difficult. The Iranians have their own elections coming up in June. The Americans and others have so demonized the Iranians that even if we got to a deal that was credible, which is highly unlikely, our ability to sell it internally and externally would be very, very difficult. But when we ask, can we live with an Iranian nuclear weapon? Hey, you call this living? I mean, this is the question. It's not really living, but we're going to deal with it, and I think that's where we're headed.
So no strike, no deal. Would you agree?
But the chances of a strike are not negligible. I would say there's somewhere around 30 or 40%, because we can't live with a nuclear weapon, and Israel and the United States may not be able to live with something that close to it.
I think the chances of a strike are over 50%, and because I think that's true, I think the chances of a deal are probably higher than Ian does, because I think the Iranians are going to know that, and there are an awful lot of reasons domestically in terms of the falling apart of the Iranian economy that means they are looking for a way to get a deal.
You can't. The deal and the strike have to collectively add up to 100%, right? Because it's either or proposition.
So I would give it 60% chance of strike, 40% chance of deal.
All right.